Welcome back to the Matter of Facts podcast on the Prepper Broadcasting Network. We talk prepping, guns, and politics every week on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. Go check out our content at mwfpodcast.com on Facebook or Instagram. You can support us via Patreon or by checking out our affiliate partners. I'm your host, Phil Rabalais. Andrew and Nick are on the other side of the mic, and here's your show. So welcome back to Matter of Facts podcast. Nick's with me. Andrew, I don't know where Andrew is. I don't know if he got doged. I don't know if he got, I don't know. I failed at my hosting job because I was supposed to have...
Recruited into Cutco.
Huh?
He got recruited into Cutco. He's now part of a pyramid scheme.
Ah. That actually seems way too believable, to be honest.
I've seen it happen. At least 3 times.
Anyway, so this is the shit show. We have a topic. It's called Pass Me the Bandaids. We're going to start off by dealing with a little bit of admin work, a quick mini topic that one of our patrons brought up sometime this morning. I don't know. I have all my notifications from all you sociopaths silenced during the day so that I can focus on work, like the 4 freaking hours of meetings in a row that I had to deal with today.
Ugh.
Yeah, so I found out about all of y'all heckling each other this afternoon, and that's why I chose to have this conversation here instead of texting back what I was going to text back, which was way more than I wanted to get into. So, the sociopaths, patrons, thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for supporting us. I would like to say thanks for the laughs, but I might have to thank y'all for the mental trauma, too. I'll send y'all my therapy bill. Y'all won't pay it.
No.
Merch, if you're into fun cheeky t-shirts and other merch, there's a link in the show description. You should check that out. It supports us. It supports a small home business. And best of all, it's not a big corporation fleecing your money. It's a little mom and pop shop, which is very near and dear to my heart. I have a frog in my throat that's trying its best to come out. And Cypress Survivalist. So March 8th, Fountain Blue State Park at the Big Pavilion. If you don't know where the Big Pavilion is, there's only one big pavilion at Fountain Blue State Park, but it is March 8th, 2025. The gist of it is that it's a free event. We're going to spend about 8 hours talking about preparedness, about a variety of different subjects. It's being put on by myself, my wife, my sister, my brother-in-law, and it is free to the public. The only thing you have to do is pay the state park $3 a head or whatever they're going to charge you to get in, because I don't have the grease to make them waive that. Sorry. So you pay them, you get a day pass to a really cool state park. Y'all should probably come visit anyway. And you can come down and listen to me talk your ear off about nonsense for most of a day, if you're into that kind of thing.
Should be fun. There'll be coffee.
There will be coffee. Disaster Coffee is sponsoring this event. So I have a brand new, it's actually over there out of the frame, but it's a Hamilton Beach 60 cup coffee urn. Yes.
Nice.
And I'm actually purchasing coffee for the event tomorrow, just to make daggum good and sure it's here well before March 8th. So there will be lots and lots of Disaster Coffee on tap for anybody that would like to come.
Fantastic.
So on to Stuart's question. And I am paraphrasing from the 7 paragraphs he wrote.
It's true. He is verbose, and he usually makes good points in those paragraphs. So it is worth the read through it if you're in the Patreon chat and you skip Stuart's rants on things. They tend to be informative.
See, that's the thing with those. That, like, I would love to give Stuart a mountain of crap about how chatty he is. But he's forgotten more about most of the stuff than most of us know, so it's kind of like, ugh. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to make jokes about, calling him grandpa and his age. True. And the fact that he had to wrestle a dinosaur.
He helped invent the typewriter.
He helped invent the typewriter. He apprenticed under Thomas Edison.
Right.
I think I might have made a joke at one point or another about how he had to wrestle a dinosaur for his dinner one evening. Like, I love him to death. I truly count him as a friend, but like, he's kind of the grandpa in the group, and we give him hell about it frequently. Which,
it's all right. He encourages.
Well, he also gives it back to all of us, so
he does. Keeps it fun.
But he asked this question, with the front loading of, like, he talked to a bunch of friends of his, and Like, what range do you zero your AR-15 to if it's chambered in 5.56? And with those rules of engagement, like, a lot of people seem to center around like either a 25-yard zero or a 100-yard zero, which my first
50 was in the mix as
50
well.
was in the mix, but honestly, my first thought was like, okay, well, 25 yards is a really common length for a gun range. 100 yards is a really common length for a gun range. I'm seeing some parallels here.
You can't really fight where the targets are sometimes.
Yeah.
But there's a good reason for each of those ranges, and it does depend on your barrel profile, your barrel length, which grain weight of bullet you're using, and your personal use case. I mean, I was brought into AR shooting using a 25-250 or it might be a 50-250. I can't remember the exact breakdown, but essentially what it comes down to is if you zero at that first range, you're going to be pretty close to the same impact point at the second range. So I used to do a lot of,
I think,
pistol carbine classes and stuff like
just
that.
so I can get my OCD out of the way, I think what you're referring to is 50-250. Because
it might be 50-250.
25-300 is what's ingrained in my head.
15 years. It could be 25-300. It's probably 50-250 then that I'm thinking of, because I know it was 250. It wasn't 300. But the whole point of that range is of those distances is if you're in a short engagement distance, your zero different distance between muzzle point and 25 yards is insignificant enough that it's not going to matter in a close quarters use of firearm.
What are you counting as close quarters, just for the audience?
So anything inside of 25 yards.
Oh, yes.
Anything inside of 25 yards. With your that would be like inside your house, in around a couple of vehicles, anything where you're not taking precision aim, because you're not going to have time.
No. And I hear what you're saying. I cringe at the age-old adage of you don't have to aim because you should always be aiming, but you don't.
Well, there's a difference between aiming and precision aiming.
You can take some shortcuts in the fundamentals of shooting when you're under 25 yards. Like, just you could take some shortcuts. It'll be all right. It's close.
Well, you can, but you're also not picking the shirt button on the target to shoot at. You're shooting at center mass.
Yeah.
At those engagement distances in that type of situation. Whereas if you're going out to 250 or 300 yards, you are picking a spot on your target or a smaller area on your target to try and hit with a smaller aim point on your reticle. Donut death reticles with the pip in the center.
Yep.
You're using that center pip at range. You're using the donut being over center mass as your pull the trigger point, because you're more than likely going to make a hit doing that. But I never had a problem with a 52-50 shooting competitions. Granted, most of the targets were between 40 yards, which was about what they considered their safe distance for ricochets or frangibles coming back at you. And their longest range was usually 250 to 300. So you really didn't have to think much about compensating for the difference in the range of the target, because your point of impact was probably not going to be like bullseye close, but it'll be alpha zone hits or beta zone hits at worst.
No, that's all fair. Now, I told you that my methodology for this is a little weird.
Yeah, go for it.
So, first of all, in long guns, I have, in semi-automatic intermediate cartridge long guns, like, let's be really specific here. I've got an AK and I've got two AR-15s. They are all, best I recall, zeroed at different ranges, which most people would scratch their head about and think to themselves, well, how do you remember what your hold-unders are on three different rifles? Stick with me on this. I don't get extremely concerned about the hold over, or hold under on a lot of my intermediate cartridge weapons for a reason. What I do is I start with kind of a basic analysis of what do I believe is the reasonable max effective range of this weapon system. So let's start at the AK. It has a scout mounted red dot. It has no magnifier, and AKs, with factory ammo, you were talking about like a 4 MOA rifle. Reasonable?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you'll get some that are better than that, but you could reliably be 3 to 4
Okay.
MOA.
So let's just say that if what I'm aiming at is roughly torso sized, 250
Sure.
yards.
Yeah.
Can you see further than that without magnification? Sure. Can you identify
Sure.
targets beyond that range reliably?
Terrain dependent.
Terrain dependent, questionable. But if it's a
Yeah.
4 MOA rifle and I'm aiming between a person's shoulders at 250 yards, that's 10 inches. So
reliable chance of hitting a target of that size at that distance.
So I'm working backwards from 250 yards. Now, given that optic is mounted on the gas block of that AK in a scout configuration, it's as close to the bore as you can get with an AK. Let's start there. Because that has its own problems.
Yeah, they're a different breed.
But I fed all this information into a ballistic calculator, including that height over bore. And what I came to the conclusion was that with whatever zero distance I picked, and I don't remember at this point, it might have been 50 yards, it might have been 75, whatever it was, I had the smallest amount of variance from that zero distance out to 250 yards. And that was what I was aiming for. It's now a function of, rather than have to know at 100 yards, I'm going to be this high or this low, and at 150 yards, I'm going to be this high or this low. I know that from point blank to 250 yards, I am within this. And I think that was what the math came out to. It was like 3.5, 3 and 3/4 inches high or low. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, if I remember right, that's fairly similar to like the 50-250 on an AR. You know, you're talking about a deviation of +2 to -2.
Yeah. So that's kind of where my mind goes, is I look at it as what gives me the narrowest cone over my engagement, over that engagement window, and that's what I zero the weapon to. I'm not so much concerned about whether it's 50 yards or 55 yards or 70 yards or 75. I don't really care. What I'm looking at is, if you look at the way zeroing a weapon works, if you understand ballistics, then you understand that when you zero at 25, 50, 75, and 100 yards, what you're doing is you're changing the path that bullet takes from the muzzle up to that zero distance, which means you're going to have, beyond that zero distance, you're going to have a much more aggressive arc up above it and before it comes back down.
True.
So by knowing that, you can either make the zero distance further out or closer so that you change what that parabola looks like. And that is mostly what I was concerned about. So like my 18-inch rifle has a magnified optic on it. It's set up as like a DMR. It's zeroed at 100 yards. I'd probably zero it at a further distance than that if I had a reliable range beyond that. But I know that with a 6x magnifier, I know that with the hand load I have in that gun, because it'll shoot about 1.5 inches at 100 yards, I know, okay, I could reliably, reasonably push this engagement window much further out than that 250 yards of that AK. I've got magnification. I've got a much more accurate weapons platform. I could probably put that on target 300-400 yards. So why wouldn't I say 400 yards is probably about where I'm going to be? And then from there to point blank is what I want that envelope to look like. But then the funny part comes with this thing that's behind me. That is 0 to 50 yards, which might not make a lot of sense because 16-inch AR shoots 5.56. There's really no reason why this thing has to be 0 to that short of a range, except it is built primarily for night vision. So the height over bore is way, way higher than either of the other rifles. And I got curious one day and started doing some math because I'm a nerd. And I realized that the higher above... Okay, so I'm just going to make a general statement, and please don't ask me to go back and dig up all the math and everything I did to prove this, but basically the higher above the bore the optic is, it's actually beneficial to make the zero range shorter. It makes for less variance above or below your point of aim out to a reasonable distance. If the optic, if the center line of the
That
optic
makes
is
sense.
closer to the barrel, it makes sense to stretch that and get that zero distance out further. It gives you a much more gentle parabola. But when when your height of a bore is this, it just makes sense to zero to a shorter range. It actually made for a weapon with much smaller holdover hold unders out to range.
Sure. That makes sense.
So that's why 10 minutes worth of conversation, I did not want to try to text all of that to all of y'all, but like that
makes sense. But it just goes back to a point that you've made before. The mission or the purpose behind the piece of gear drives how you set it up.
Yeah.
And what piece you need.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I've always told people, and this is guns, this is almost everything. It's always, I'm less interested in what you did or what you chose than why. Because why, first of all, it tells me you thought about it. But why to me is more interesting because it's the why a lot of times that lets us pick apart each other's stuff and be like, well, did you think of this? Did you consider this? I don't like to make blanket statements and blanket recommendations. I am much more prone to tell people like, let's talk about everything that you and I are seeing that might affect your decision, and then let's let you make a decision that makes sense for you.
Absolutely.
Even though I understand that this is the internet and that level of like mature, thoughtful discussion is kind of anathema to our society these days. I get it. I can't help myself.
Well, we gave stupid people the ability to talk to the masses. Congratulations. The arguments have devolved.
I mean, I hate to say it, but you and I didn't do that.
No, I'm saying we as humanity did that.
I was about to say,
and we are now reaping the consequences.
Can't even say that was like our generation. I'm pretty sure stupid people talking to the masses started with monarchs.
Well, yeah, probably book printing. Yeah, but it has its ups and downs.
I'm just saying, you can only have so many kids with your cousins before the gene pool needs to be dredged. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason so many of the Habsburg and the Rothschilds have weak chins and jacked up teeth. But that's a different show.
Mostly because they're the same family.
Family tree is a vine.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so let's talk about the topic, which is home medical. Now, I did promise my wife I was not going to pick on her, but she is the one.
No, don't do that.
No, she's cooking my dinner, and I don't want to find things in it that'll upset me later. But no, she inspired this because a couple of weeks ago she was making dinner. I don't remember what I was doing. I was close by, and the next thing I know, I heard an owl and a stream of profanity roll out of her mouth. Turned around, and she was doing the "oh, I hurt myself" dance in the kitchen, like one foot to the other, grasping her hands together. And I was like, "Oh shit!" Didn't know how
there was cutlery in here.
Yeah, well, I also heard the kitchen knife clatter into the sink, and I was like, "Oh, Jesus Christ!" So, had to go over, and the very first thing I did, honestly, and I couldn't tell you if this is the right thing or wrong thing to do, but like with both of her hands like this, I just put my hands around her wrists to like take control of her and be like, like try to get her to stop looking at it. And I'm like, babe, look at me. Let me deal with the cut. I can't tell how bad it is. I need you to open your hands up. And eventually I got her to like relax enough to show me what the cut was, and I was able to assess it, and we dealt with it at home. It did not. We could debate with the internet forever whether or not it should have got stitched. I've cut myself much worse and not stitched it. So like it was fine the next day, but it was deep enough that it needed to be dealt with.
Yeah, deep enough that it was going to make a mess if it wasn't handled.
Yeah. But
I know exactly what you're talking about.
But it did kind of bring up this whole thing, because how many times have we talked before about how none of y'all out there in listener land had better have a tourniquet and not have a whole bunch of Band-Aids under your sink? Because I'm not saying I'll be mad at you, but I'll be very disappointed. Raggle Fraggle had a work call. Tell your work to buzz off. No, don't tell them to buzz off.
Yeah, don't tell them that. Paychecks are very important. We all like getting paid here. This is a capitalist podcast.
Yes. This is a capitalist podcast. I like having a job. I like getting paid. Fortunately, my work stops calling me before this podcast starts, and I very much like to keep it that way if at all humanly possible.
I leave my phone in a different room, so even if they called, I'll find out later.
So yeah, I mean that's kind of what inspired this, and I thought it'd be a good topic to go through and talk about because, like, I feel like a lot of preparedness shows talk medical stuff, and I feel like a lot of people immediately go to, like, Tac-Med side of things. They start talking about
trauma
medicine,
stop the bleed,
which I get, I understand.
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
it's when it matters, it's the only thing that matters.
Yeah. But, and not just that, but like, Nick, you've heard of the rule of threes, right? Like 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, yada, yada, yada. Well, that whole 3 minutes thing is, if you don't get airflow to the brain for 3 minutes, really bad things start happening. And I always get somebody with this. I ask them, what could stop you from getting air to your brain? And everybody immediately goes to asphyxiation, drowning. Some people go smoke inhalation. But the one thing they almost always forget? Exsanguination. Mm-hmm. Because the red stuff in your body is what's supposed to get the oxygen where it's supposed to go. And if it doesn't do its job, then really bad things start happening. So I always point out to people, I'm like, if you're bleeding, no other problem is as pressing as that. You don't have the time to be worrying about, oh, I'm hungry, or, oh, I'm thirsty. If you have an arterial bleed, you have one problem to deal with. All the others can wait until after that's dealt with. So I totally get the focus on, like, Tac-Med. I totally get the focus on trauma care. I get it.
That's cool guy stuff.
Yeah, it is cool guy stuff. But you know what else is cool? I mean, being able to take care of your wife when she drags a kitchen knife through the friggin' tip of her finger.
Oh, absolutely. Or being able to take care of yourself when you do something stupid and put your finger into an angle grinder or something. I mean, it happens to anybody that does any amount of,
Nick, have you put your finger into an angle grinder?
No, not an angle grinder. A bench grinder, yes, but not an angle grinder. I've had to fix up people that have done it with angle grinders.
I'm just saying, the minute you said do stupid things a little too smoothly, and I was like,
hey, you know what? We all do stupid things. We've all injured ourselves. I mean, Phil, I can't be the only one here that's cut themselves with a pocket knife doing something that they probably shouldn't have been.
You're gonna make me do this, aren't you? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but
oh shit, that's weird. I got one on that same spot on my left hand.
Well, that's 6 stitches and a tendon repair when I was
I missed the tendon.
13 years old, I think.
How old are you?
42.
In 5th grade. 12?
I might have been older than that. Okay, I was starting my freshman year of high school, but this happened over the summer.
The day before I went into 5th grade, I was carving some, I want to say, balsa wood with an X-Acto knife.
Oh.
And I slipped. And I put that X-Acto knife right across my thumb, cut the nerve that goes up the back of my thumb. It's still numb most of the time. But, yeah, so I got to start 5th grade with a, baseball mitt worth of gauze wrapped around my hand. I mean, look, these things happen, especially if you play around with anything that's even remotely dangerous. I mean, the steel chips off that lathe back there will slice you open like a razor blade. This stuff you have to have around. I mean, if you do any cooking at home, you should be playing with very sharp knives because dull knives do so much more damage.
Yes. So anyway, that's kind of what provoked all this. Was we had that experience. I had to triage my wife's finger, drag the bucket of stuff, of which I have a picture of, out from underneath the cabinet. Mm-hmm. We had to do wound care. It was dealt with. She's fine. She's not going to lose her finger or anything. But, like, it caused me to think about how many people out there might overlook something like this, or even just how many people, like, they have their one box of Bandaids deep in their medicine cabinet, which, like, goes against a lot of the things we preach. Like, we talk about how 2 is 1, 1 is none. We talk about stacking things deep. We talk about buying things in bulk, especially things that don't have expiration dates or don't spoil very often.
Or at least very long expiration dates.
I'm going to tell you, I've never pulled a Band-Aid out and had the adhesive fail. Unless it was
have.
unless it was really, really cheap, crappy Band-Aids. But the really good ones last for a while.
They do. They last for a very long time. I mean, long enough that you're going to go through the box more than likely. I mean, I think the one time I saw it happen, it was at my grandparents' house, and who knows how long those things had been there.
Yeah. It also helps keep electrical tape around.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, electrical tape is a big one.
I'm not too proud to admit that I have electrical tape gauze onto me before when I was working in blue collar jobs.
Well, if you are sweaty, if there is oil around, if there's coolant around, that electrical tape sticks so much better than the adhesive on the Band-Aids.
Good.
It's probably not great for your
It's
skin.
good for hair removal.
It does do that very well.
It's really good for hair removal. If you're into having smooth, not hairy hands, boys, like electrical tape or duct tape, highly recommend it.
It will do that. But
so anyway,
so
let's start with the really boring part that nobody wants to talk about. Start with what's between your ears. Training, experience. I mean, there's a whole bunch of wound care there's a whole bunch of wound care, honestly, you could learn from talking to somebody over the age of 60.
Absolutely.
And if you don't have anybody in your life that like can pass along a lot of that to you, then
join the Patreon group and talk to Stuart.
Join the Patreon group and talk to Stuart. Or go make some freaking friends, like at a church or a social club or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of this, hell, YouTube University. There's so much.
Yep.
This is one of those moments where I hate to be on a soapbox, but like, it drives me crazy when somebody says that they can't figure out where to learn something. Because I'm like, y'all says all y'all on the internet have more information on your cell phones in your pockets right now than I had in an encyclopedia set when I was a kid. So the idea that you cannot
Absolutely.
Google literally freaking anything and figure it out in 5 minutes or less drives me nuts. But like, a lot of this is just basic. Do some research and learn it. Or if you're talking about more the Tac-Med side of things, where it's like how to do triaging or how to do more advanced techniques or how to use more advanced equipment, there's classes all around the country that are available that can take you from zero and get you to a point where you should have some reasonable confidence.
I mean, pick up a reasonably recent Boy Scout manual. Or hell, even the one from when I was a kid. I was going through and throwing away shit a few years ago that I have moved through 3 different houses and found my Boy Scout manual. The first aid section took up a third of the book. It was a phenomenal first aid
because
section.
they knew who they were recruiting.
Yeah. Adolescent and teenage boys that they're handing hatchets and pocket knives to. We went through a lot of Band-Aids and gauze.
But y'all learned.
Well, we did. And the other great thing about it is you don't even have to pick up a manual. All right, Red Cross classes.
Yep.
I guarantee you, if you live anywhere in the continental U.S., you are probably within a couple-hour drive of a Red Cross class. Possibly even free Red Cross classes put on by your local fire department. I mean, I think the town I live in now does it once a year where you can sign up for a class, and if you weren't at the class last year, they'll give you a priority spot in this year's. But the town I lived in prior to this, they did them quarterly. Yeah, and anybody could walk in and take the class, paid for by your tax dollars. You might as well take advantage of it. Was it advanced wilderness first aid and trauma medicine? No. Basic triage and basic wound care to help somebody get them to a higher level of care? Absolutely.
But then again, if you haven't taken those basic first aid classes, why on God's green earth are you even thinking about advanced medical courses?
Because that's what the fancy YouTube men say.
Well, the fancy YouTube men are morons. And feel free to quote me on that, because I'm not a fancy...
I mean, we are on YouTube,
yes,
and I have been known to be a moron.
Yes, but we're not fancy. And we pretty universally espouse common sense on this show. You know, try to.
Common sense and anti-government rhetoric.
Oh, that needs to be on a shirt.
We can do that. We do know a lady. She does a very nice job. The t-shirts are excellent.
Common sense and anti-government rhetoric. Now I just need somebody that can make little cartoon characters out of you and me. Do you know an animator?
We could probably find a guy. Animator? No, graphic designer, 2 of them.
That'll work.
Yeah, I'll reach out.
All right, so here's the other thing. It's like I start with what's in your medicine cabinet. Please start with what's in your medicine cabinet. Like, there's no reason not. First of all, like let's consider for a moment that like we've talked before about like food prepping, and the first thing I said to everybody back then was like start with what's in your pantry. Like your pantry is part of this. Everything that's in your pantry you probably eat, I'm assuming, and you should probably have more of it somewhere else. Like that's how this works. So whenever we start talking about medical stuff, I immediately say, what's in your medicine cabinet? Let's start there. Like you should have, and I just listed a whole bunch of stuff. And if this sounds like stuff that's in your medicine cabinet already, good, you passed the test. Like it should be in your medicine cabinet.
But do you have a backup bottle?
But there's the next part, because after you've exhausted your medicine cabinet, because unless your medicine cabinet is much cooler and much larger than mine is, I have a literal box of junk underneath the sink in the bathroom, and
Yep.
it's more Band-Aids. I was telling Nick before we started running the show, Costco sells these bulk packs of Band-Aids, and
they're fantastic.
Only Jesus knows how many are in there. All I know is I saw one and thought, why not? I can always find a reason to buy more Band-Aids. But Band-Aids, 4x4s, which is just, like little foam, little gauze pads, they're freaking useful for everything. Rolled gauze, cohesive bandage, I buy that stuff a box at a time because it's useful as hell.
Amazon has cohesive bandage 24 packs for reasonable prices, and they're pretty good quality.
That's where all of mine have come from. I'm pretty sure is Amazon. No, I take it back. I've bought some locally over the counter.
When I believe last time I ordered them, and I don't quote me on this, but when I compared it to like Walmart prices of buying 2 rolls, I was able to get 24 pack of the Coban for about the same price as 4 rolls from Walmart. It was a significant cost savings.
Yeah, like I said,
you had to order it a couple days out.
But I mean, quite frankly, you should have enough of this stuff lying around that waiting a couple of days shouldn't be the end of the world.
Yeah, my wife had a minor foot surgery, so we were going through a fair amount of Coban, holding gauze and various other dressings to her feet so that she could wear normal shoes, and go about her day-to-day life. And my God, the amount of Coban we went through, it was ridiculous.
Yeah. But the thing I love about cohesive band is just like, I'm sure everyone has had that experience of like trying to use the big Band-Aids, and your feet get a little bit sweaty, or your skin gets a little bit oily, and the freaking adhesive immediately starts coming off. So yeah, I've gotten to the point where I reach immediately for medical tape, and if I'm medical taping anything, I'm going all the way around the limb back to the tape.
Yep.
Or I'm reaching for a cohesive bandage, or something that's going to encase the limb or encase the wound and go all the way around it so that it's not going to come off.
Let it breathe.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing is like as soon as the wound is closed enough, I like to leave it open in the evening while you're sleeping so you can get some air to it.
Yeah, it seems to help. I'm not entirely sure on the medical reasons for why, but it works good.
I'm not smart enough to know the biological reason for it. I just know it works, and that's usually good enough for me.
Raggle brings up a good point. What's the stuff called for diabetics to get a quick fix, not insulin? Probably some kind of glycerin, like a simple sugar in a gel. I have seen people use pixie sticks and hard candies in a pinch.
So I know that when I was growing up, my mother was and still is hypoglycemic, and I also struggle with it. And what always did her a lot of good was the Lance peanut butter crackers, the little round ones.
Oh, sure.
Peanut butter is great because it's got a ton of protein in it. So
ton of protein, little bit of simple carbs.
So yeah, it's not going to like shoot your blood sugar up as fast as sugar will, but the carbs will get your blood sugar up pretty quickly. But then the protein from the peanut butter tends to like have some staying power and settle things down. But you know, all those things. I would say that if you are diabetic, then whatever you need to treat that in a pinch needs to be in here, and probably needs to be in all of your kits.
Yeah, I agree. Raggle asked as well if we keep glycerin packs in our first aid stuff. I do not,
I don't.
because my wife, my family, me, we're not diabetics. And I have been told by my one friend who is that hard candy is just about as good. So I keep some of that around because I like hard candy anyway. And so it's a nice little morale booster thing. In my hiking packs, I like a little bit of Jolly Ranchers, Reese's Pieces, stuff like that, and that works for a good quick sugar pick me up. I mean, even stuff like fruit leathers and whatnot can work because there's sugar in it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, obviously it's not as ideal as like a glycerin gel that they could just quick slurp down.
Yeah, and I can't speak for diabetes, but like I can say that for hypoglycemia, because hypoglycemia is usually being caused by an overactive pancreas. Like you eat
Mm-hmm.
something that pisses it off, and it says all the insulin right now, and that
Okay, so critically low sugar.
yeah, that's hypoglycemia
That's
versus hyper. But
that is just as dangerous.
it is, but that's why that's why I feel like I can always speak to that. Like that's why I'm very heavily reliant on things like nuts, peanut butter, things that have a lot of protein, because
Slow
it is
calories.
ultimately the protein that is going to stabilize your blood sugar. Because if you're hypoglycemic and you respond to, wow, my blood sugar is really low with a big dose of sugar, guess what your pancreas is going to do? All the
It's
insulin
going to make it
again.
worse.
So you wind up in this
Yeah.
roller coaster where your blood sugar goes way up and then it crashes and it goes up and it crashes. And, that's why,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons I've gone to this like high fat, high protein diet, is because it doesn't piss my pancreas off and it just keeps my blood sugar nice and neutral.
That makes
But I
sense.
digress. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, alcohol prep pads. Buy those damn
Always a good idea.
yeah, buy those damn
Triple antibiotic ointment, the little sachets. So that stuff's fantastic too.
skin stapler. I think I got given that by somebody, and it's just stayed under my cabinet in case somebody has a really, really bad day.
That's one I've debated on getting, but I've also got the steri strips that
Yeah.
work kind of okay, and they're not as invasive, especially for people that aren't like you and myself that are okay with suffering. Because when you get your skin stapled at the hospital, they numb all of that, and I can't imagine it would be comfortable to do without the numbing agent.
Quite possibly. That's why I don't intend to use it unless there's simply no other good options.
Right. I mean, as a last ditch red line, sure, I get it. It's just one I have not seen fit to include yet.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea. I mean, potentially.
Yeah. Steri strips are another
But
good one. I've got a handful of
yeah.
those in the medicine cabinet.
The vacuum packed ones or the like paper sealed ones?
No, these are the ones that are like plastic. They're like vacuum packed in plastic.
Yeah, get the vacuum packed ones because I had some of the paper packed ones when I first got into hiking. I would throw some in my hiking pack because if you slip and fall on something, you could gash your leg up pretty good. And steri strips are great for that. But the paper ones, the humidity took all the adhesive off of them, and the paper actually opened up and started falling apart.
That doesn't shock
in
me.
my hiking pack over a summer. Yeah, lesson learned, man. I spent a few months, running that stuff around in the bush, and it went to crap. So I stopped buying those and got the ones that were about twice the price, but they stay together and they've got a Best Buy date. I think that was like 7 years out.
Yeah. And before we get off of this, ace bandages and splints for obvious
Yes.
freaking reasons. And this doesn't even
Sam splints, fantastic.
and this doesn't even get into like, like the wrist braces, the knee braces, the ankle braces, because every one of us has rolled or twisted something at one point or another. Like there's
ace bandage can cover a lot of those, at least temporarily.
Yeah. Now let's see here. Do you want me to flip over to your box under the sink? Yeah, let's do it that way.
That's actually that's
slide number
sure.
6.
I mean, go to the red bag first. Go to the red bag first. I think that was, I don't remember what slide it was. So this is what stays in our linen closet. All right. This is Not boo-boos. There are some larger bandages in some of the side pockets, but this has got chest seals, gauze, tourniquets, gloves, splints, large triangular bandages. There is CPR stuff in here.
Big boo-boo stuff.
This is grab the bad bag. You know, like if you tell somebody, if someone's seriously injured, you can go in the house, take a left, small linen closet door, open it, grab the red bag. If someone is seriously injured, this has got most of the stuff you're going to need. In that same closet, there are, on a different level, there are bandages, there are, antibiotic ointment, stuff like that, bee sting kit stuff. But this is like grab in case of emergencies bag. It's all bundled up together, snapped together. It's got the paramedic symbol. So anybody with any medical training at all sees that bag, they're going to go, okay, this is clearly a trauma bag. They're going to grab that and they'll have everything they need. I think there's some cold packs in there too. But what in my medicine cabinet is more of like basic bandages and stuff like that. So and then this is like overflow in my pantry kind of thing down in the basement. This is all the stuff that's out for ready use. There's further extra of all of this in a Pelican case for weatherproof storage, but you'll see there's 4x4 gauze here, triple antibiotic ointment, big triangular bandages, ab pads, gauze rolls, sting relief, because we've got a lot of bees. In fact, guys in the Patreon group might remember that I had to take out about a 4-foot long section of my soffit. I went through quite a few of those sting relief pads. They're fantastic, by the way. I've got airway kits and bagging kits because I've got a friend who's an EMT and a friend who is an intensive care and trauma nurse. So I kind of asked them, I was like, hey, above and beyond normal first aid stuff, if somebody got hurt, say cutting down a tree or whatever on my property, because I do that stuff fairly often, what would you want me to have? And my buddy said an airway kit would be fantastic. It's simple. You know, you only have to replace the tubes when they go bad. The bags usually last for many, many years. He said, buy this stuff, buy the nasopharyngeal airway stuff and those little multi-size pieces on the right-hand image there next to the steri strips. He said, get that stuff and you're pretty well good. He said, I could bag somebody and keep them alive for a much longer time than CPR will allow. And then a big box of the instant cold compresses because sometimes you don't have time to dick around with an ice pack.
So that seems pretty comprehensive.
I mean, that is the list of stuff that was recommended to me by the medical professionals in my life. And they said beyond that, you're really not treating anything without an EMT or a trauma doctor. So the only other thing I guess you could get would be maybe one of those AEDs, but currently they're quite a bit cost prohibitive for personal possession.
Yeah.
In my budget class. I'm sure there are some of us that can afford it, but it's not.
And
me.
see, I want to put that in the bucket of like almost like stuff to treat diabetes. Like if you have a member of your household who has a particular medical condition or need you might need to treat, you should probably invest some additional dollars in things that go towards that.
Sure.
But
somebody with a heart condition.
Yeah. But like look at my family. 12-year-old, 42-year-old, 41-year-old. Nobody with a heart condition that we know about. Am I saying that there's no utility to having an AED? No, but I am saying that before I would spend a not inconsequential amount of money on one, there's other things I should probably consider getting that are much more pertinent to my family and our lifestyle.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, they're in the thousands of dollars range, the $1,500 to $2,500 range.
But Nick, if it was you and your wife, and let's say y'all are in your 60s, and one of y'all has had a heart attack in the past, then
I have been
that couple of
trying to convince my grandparents to do exactly that.
because now that couple of $1,000 is like, okay, it's now this is we're in a situation where like that couple $1,000 might be a reasonable expenditure because it could save somebody's life.
Sure. And realistically, while you can have heart attacks and heart problems at a very young age, chances are there are warning signs or symptoms for that. I mean, it's pretty rare that you have like a 30-year-old or a 26-year-old have a massive heart attack without some kind of warning sign. Or some kind of behavior that causes it, drug use or whatever.
It's all cost benefit analysis at the end of the day.
Mhm.
If you have reason to suspect that there's a higher than average likelihood of that happening, you should probably think about it.
At least consider it.
So now here's the question. Here's the thing where I suspect all the internet nerds just got a happy moment because they're like, ooh, they're going to talk about Instagram cool guy stuff. But I'm actually kind of hoping you and I don't agree on all this because that's always where the fun starts.
Sure.
All right. So different kids, different stuff, ? So this is just the three things I happen to have in the office because I didn't feel like having to drag everything else out. The top left, that is what Stuart continues to call my man purse, and he's a bastard for calling it that. That is actually that's kind of like, it's the companion to a truck gun. So it stores a couple of PCC mags, a couple of pistol mags for my daily carry, and it has basically an IFAK worth of stuff in it for obvious reasons. If I have to jump out of the truck because I have a problem to deal with, and I have my truck gun, which is a 9mm PCC, this thing goes with me, and it's all the things I need. But it's not a chest rig because I can put it on the back seat of my truck, and it doesn't look like it's full of friggin' magazines and stuff.
Yep.
The top right is just a chest rig that's actually set up for AR mags. And the bag in the middle is actually my hiking pack. So that's usually has like a radio, and it has a big Nalgene bottle, and it has some mainstay rations, but it also has some medical stuff in it for obvious reasons. Because, when you're walking around the woods for hours on end, it just kind of pays to be able to bandage yourself up if stuff happens. See, Raggle Fraggle is trying to get on my good side. It's a satchel. It's not a man purse.
What is a purse but a fancy satchel? Let's be honest here.
You're fired, Nick. You're not supposed to.
You don't pay me.
You're not supposed to encourage Stuart. He doesn't need encouragement.
I will encourage anyone who stirs shit in the comments.
I knew I could depend on you.
Good.
So now here's what's inside all three of those things. And if this looks like mostly the same stuff, it kind of is in a lot of regards. Like, there's a cat tourniquet in each one of these kits because why wouldn't you have a cat tourniquet? There's cohesive bandage in each.
Cheap insurance.
Because why wouldn't you have cohesive bandage in every one of them? There's actually like a vacuum packed Israeli bandage in two of these and not in the third. And I haven't totally decided if I'm going to stick an Israeli bandage in the hiking pack. I mean, I've kind of got other things to cover other things on that, but there's also a hemostat in all three of them, and chest seals and cohesive bandage 4x4s. Really, the only difference here is that hiking pack also has trauma shears, and it also has like Bandaids and Bandaids and alcohol prep pads, because I'm anticipating being in different situations with a hiking pack where like we might have a little cut or a nick or a branch might scratch you and you just need to deal with it. Whereas those other two kits are really, really more centered around, I have a big gaping hole in a part of my body I would rather not have a big gaping hole in, and it needs to be dealt with immediately. So I've got a lot of the same stuff for a lot of those, but then I kind of add a few things for others depending on what I think the use case is going to be.
Sure. I mean, I can understand why you would want to try to save weight and a little bit of space in a hiking kit. Because, man, every ounce you add on your back just makes things harder, makes the hike harder. But I like having those combat dressings or those Israeli dressings in there. Not because I've ever needed them, but just because they are, from what I've seen other people use them for in wilderness medicine, they're good for other things other than just bandaging. They're a good sturdy strap if nothing else.
We've used them as
And if you
slings in the
get somebody
past.
that, a sling, broken bone, they can be a pretty decent help to improvise a splint if you need a splint and you don't have one with you. But you guys aren't going on like 12-mile backcountry hikes, right?
Ask me that story another time.
Oh dear. We'll have to get into that later.
Tell you what, when you meet my wife this summer, ask her about Nakalulu Falls. Watch the look on her face when you drop that on her.
Oh yeah, I'm sure my wife will bring up Henwallow too. We went to Henwallow in Tennessee, and that was supposed to be a 3 mile out, 3 mile back. My GPS disagrees heavily with those trail postings.
Yeah. Nakalulu Falls was supposed to be a walking trail, a pretty easy walking trail. So I was told it'd be fine in shorts and flip-flops. And then we hung a left instead of a right. And that was the wrong thing to do.
See, that there is the key. Always knowing where you're going and having a map and a compass with you when you're hiking.
Yes, well, that was the last time my wife has gotten me to go on a hike without me having closed-toed shoes, long pants, and some stuff with me. Just,
Yeah. I'm the same way. I will not go on even a couple mile hike without some form of medical, backup water, closed-toed shoes. Oh, it's just,
I forgot to mention the other thing in that hiking pack, which is not medical related, but it's just a mainstay ration.
Because that's a good call.
Yeah.
Backup food, snacks, little gorp, trail mix, whatever. Something to keep your energy up, because nothing gets people hurt faster hiking than not being in a right state of mind because of either crashing sugar levels or not having enough water.
Mm-hmm. So other than me adding a other than adding an Israeli bench to this center kit, like, thoughts?
I would like to see at least a second tourniquet on your chest rig and in your truck kit. Because this is a thing that I have been told by a number of either guys that have been in combat and treated gunshot wounds, or my trauma nurse buddy. Sometimes, especially on bigger gentlemen like yourself and I, who have thick legs, it takes more than one tourniquet to stop a bleed.
This is true.
And I have not heard of it taking more than 4 to stop a bleed on a guy's leg, but I have heard of up to 4 being used on like an IED injury. Not that you and I are going to be encountering that, but
we hope.
I'd rather not. But if you do take one to the leg and you need to stop a bleed on your leg or your upper thigh, you may need that second or possibly even third tourniquet. So I'd like to see at least 2.
No, that's probably fair. Let's see here while I advance forward. So I told
your work stuff.
Yeah. So I told you earlier, like, I'm not showing y'all the bag this is going in because it has my organization's crest about this tall on it. And I'm really trying not to aggravate my employer with my extracurricular activities. But this is the stuff that's now packed up to go to work with me for obvious reasons. And it should look pretty familiar because it's mostly the same as what's in a lot of those other kits. It's a hemostat, it's 4x4s, it's chest seals, it's a roll of gauze, it's cohesive bandage. But the one thing I wanted to point out, because you remember earlier we were talking about your steri strips and how that they were paper wrapped and the humidity got to them. So you probably see the Bandaids and that big pack
everything's
stuff.
Vacuum packed.
So here's the thing: if all of you out there in listener land, if you don't have a vacuum pack or a vacuum bagger, you should have one, because on top of being able to like vacuum pack meat and fill up a chest freezer, which is I highly recommend for lots of reasons.
Seriously good investment.
You can use it to make battle packs of ammo. You can use it like this, like all of my stuff that goes in any of my medical kits, any of my IFAKs, it's all vacuum bagged, because
Yep.
Now that whole IFAC can get dropped into a bucket of water and soaked, and all the stuff inside stays dry. And the only thing I encourage you to do if you go this route, because you could probably imagine how aggravating it'd be to have your life-saving equipment vacuum bagged away and you not have a knife or a pair of scissors to open it up with. So what I do with all these is that I actually cut slits on. Yeah,
Pre-notch.
I
Yep.
pre-notch outside of where the thermoform seam is, but I notch all four corners so that anywhere, no matter what orientation you grab that thing, if you grab a corner, you
Tear it
can
open.
rip it open with your bare hands. I do that on every one of them. I don't vacuum pack anything super, super, super tight, like to get all the air out of it. I just kind of like, enough to get the puffiness down and kind of like start to compress things, and then I seal it up right there. Um, but that's something I recommend doing. And then I've got
I agree.
a little medicine cup full of single use super glue tubes, because they come in handy for all sorts of stuff. But like if you have a big old gash that you're probably gonna need a stitch or two for, one of those will seal you up. It's gonna burn like hell, but
Absolutely.
it'll do the job.
It's really not as bad if you go with, like we were talking about before the show. There are two kinds of super glue. There's the gel type, and then there's that really thin, runny type. The gel type will sit on top of that cut. You hold it shut, have your coworker or your buddy spray a little of that gel over the top of it, or get it on your finger, pinch it together, and then rub it on there. Do it fast so you don't glue your finger to your wound.
Whoops.
But yeah, trust me, done that. Um, that gel type will sit on top instead of going down into your wound, so it doesn't tend to sting as much. But
Radical has a question.
yeah.
What's your opinion on the medical kits that Academy has in the wide waterproof card holders?
I'm not familiar with them. I have no opinion. I would have to look into them. I will look into them.
I'll look into them. I will say that like I have exactly one medical kit in this house that was commercially purchased that I didn't assemble myself. And
REI has some great ones.
I'm not going to disparage all of them as a general rule. I will say that like you need to be very particular about buying any pre-made medical kit. You need to know what the contents are, and you need to make sure that the contents are of decent quality, because most people have had that experience of buying like 100-piece medical kit and it's 99 Band-Aids and one piece of gauze. And the 99 Band-Aids are good.
Yeah.
You're going to need those, but
you're overpaying for them.
Yeah. So
generally,
that's, I mean, like just recently to build out this kit for work, I literally I ordered 3 things. And it, by the way, the cart with shipping ended up being like 80 freaking bucks, because hemostats and genuine cat
They're
tourniquets
pricey,
are
but
not cheap.
worth it.
But I needed nothing else to build that kit out. I had it all here. Like I have a whole bin full of freaking Kobang and 4x4s and all that stuff. The only thing I really needed was another quick clot, another set of chest seals, and another tourniquet, and everything else I had in bulk.
Yeah, anytime you're going to buy any pre-made kit, be it medical, be it the bug-out bags you see people selling online, know what's in it, research the quality, and try to find out if it's actually a good value. North American Medical, I believe, is a company that is a licensed reseller of cat tourniquets. They do medical kits. From what I've seen, they're very good. Dark Angel Medical does a very excellent number of kits. They're fantastic. I'm not familiar with many other ones.
So I haven't, for the name of full disclosure, I haven't purchased from them, but I've talked to people that have. Refuge Medical, I have not heard bad things about.
I'm not familiar with
and
them
also, at all. I want to say it's Medical Gear Outfitters.
Could be.
You remember Skinny Medic off of YouTube, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I've met him, but I also we know mutual people through like Firearms Radio Network, and I've purchased from him a handful of times. Haven't had a bet.
Yeah, his stuff is good.
Yeah. Well, he's also,
but again, do your research. Yeah. I mean, he's an EMT.
Yeah.
So do your research.
All right, Nick.
So
talk us through.
We got got a couple things here. That belt that you see up top there is what I wear when I go to pistol shoots, pistol competitions, or say when I went to the shotgun class with Andrew, I was wearing that exact belt. I was using the 30-round AR pouches combined with shotgun cards to run through Trek's class. You'll see a couple of things on there. I'll have my pistol holster. I'll have a couple of mag pouches for pistols, the mag pouches for rifles or shotguns, dump pouch, 2 tourniquets on the belt. These tourniquets, and then a medical, basically like a trauma kit next to it. The 2 tourniquets, the reason why I have them kind of in the middle of that belt, you'll notice, is that I can reach them with both hands from either side of my body. So, they're not all on the right side where I wouldn't be able to necessarily reach. It's kind of in the middle. You're not really going to sit down and drive a vehicle around with this, but the picture below it and to the left is that medical kit opened up. It is a gunshot wound only kit. It is a trauma kit. There's a chest, I think 2 chest seals in there, a set of gloves, wound pack dressing, combat bandage, and then I think a couple of the coagulant gauzes, the hemostatic gauzes, and trauma shears. That is only for if things go as wrong as they possibly can on a firearms range. The kit next to it, that's my EDC backpack that comes with me most places I go. It's very similar to like a hiking medical kit. There is a few different over-the-counter medications for headaches, antidiarrheals, allergy medications like Benadryl in case somebody's having an anaphylactic reaction. There are 2 hemostatic agents in there. There is that was the other thing I wanted you to put in yours. You don't have any Mylar blankets. You don't have any emergency blankets.
I don't carry them in my hiking pack. Maybe I should.
I think you should, because one of the most common environmental injuries you see hiking is either hypo or hyperthermia. And you can never underestimate, the rescue blanket I have in here is not the cheap little shitty foil ones. Okay. This one is one of the thicker ones. They cost quite a bit more. Instead of a couple bucks, they're like $15, but it's got a blaze orange panel on the back side of it. So the entire blanket, not only is it one of the Mylar heat reflective blankets, but it's more durable because it's got a backing on it, and it can be an excellent signaling device. Because if you're waving a 6-foot blaze orange panel, people are going to be able to see you for miles.
That's true.
Other than that, in that backpack in different pockets, they're not visible in that picture, are 2 of the combat dressings and a pair of tourniquets. I personally think 2 on my battle belt, class belt, whatever you guys want to call it, is good. I have another 2 tourniquets on my plate carrier. If I'm doing a class where it's going to be live fire all the time with people I don't know, I usually will have all 4 tourniquets with me and the armor on. It's a little more uncomfortable, but I've had negligent discharges occur in classes I have been in. If you guys in the Patreon group have heard the story, it was a police range safety officer finger fucking the trigger on his AR when he thought it was on safe and popped a round off, and it almost hit himself in the foot. And then when the instructor was trying to get him off the range and to disarm himself, he said, "No, the gun malfunctioned. It's not my fault." He popped a second round off into the ground in between where him and the instructor were standing.
Someone remind me why I get such a horrible migraine whenever somebody says only police officers should have guns. They're trained. They're professionals.
Well, the problem is that man got complacent with safety because he thought he knew better and he thought he was better. And then he began to argue that he was still better after proving he was not. It can be anybody. Anybody can have a negligent discharge if they become negligent.
Yes, but the ones that beat their chest the loudest fall the furthest.
You know, I have always tried to be as safety conscious as I possibly can while in firearms classes, while I am handling firearms in general, because there's no second chances with that stuff. There is not.
You know, years and years ago, me and a buddy were shooting together, and he made the comment that I was paranoid about safety. And you know what I responded to him with? I'm like, yes, I've also never shot myself, and I like to keep that record.
I mean, can you imagine the amount of just shit you would get from everybody that knows you if you, the safety guy, shot himself by accident?
You remember that conversation we were having at the very beginning of the show where I said that I am truly, to this day, terrified of table saws and chainsaws, and I own both and use them, but they legitimately scare the hell out of me.
Oh, they should. They're some of the most destructive tools that most people will interact with.
And for these same reasons, I believe that a little bit of fear around firearms is actually probably pretty healthy. Because, like,
a healthy respect for the power of the tool.
Yes.
Is how my grandfather always words it.
Yeah. I always call it healthy respect for the consequences of screwing up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I mean, and realistically, I mean, if all things go perfectly, you'll never need any of this medical kit. But it's a pretty rare year that goes by where you don't need some of your medical kit.
Okay, but let me recant what you just said. There's a pretty near zero chance you're not going to need some of the stuff that's on this list that ought to be in your medicine cabinet.
Yeah. I mean, hey, you never know. Miracle years can happen. Maybe you don't get sick at all one day.
Have you ever had one of those?
Yeah, actually once.
Didn't
COVID.
need a Band-Aid?
Band-Aids, okay. Yes. Didn't get sick, though.
Okay.
But that's a hazard of my work environment. Every single thing I touch is a razor blade that's either heavier or stronger than me. So
yeah. Well, I guess that's just kind of why I phrase it that way. Like, you know, like, yes, I have, and I like take my truck, for example, and I didn't even think to get pictures of any of that because it's not here in my office where it was quick at hand. But like, yes, I have 2 tourniquets in the truck. I have an IFAK in the truck. I've also got a whole like Tupperware bin behind one of the seats that's all boo-boo stuff. It's Band-Aids, and it's 4x4s, and it's gauze, and it's Tylenol and ibuprofen and Benadryl, and it's all this stuff. Guess what I've used in the truck more than anything else?
Tylenol and Band-Aids.
It sure as hell is not the cat tourniquets that I'm whooping out every time somebody gets a splinter. It's honestly the mundane stuff that gets used all. Yeah, well, thank God that we're not whooping out tourniquets on the wife and daughter. But you know, I guess that's just kind of
ideally you never will have to.
Ideally, I hope I never do. But that's also why, like, I line all this stuff up together as a cautionary note for the people that are on either end of this scenario. For the people who have all the IFAKs and all the tourniquets and all that stuff, but they're down to their last box of Band-Aids and that doesn't seem to be a problem for them. And for the people that are on the opposite end of things and think, well, I'm never going to need a tourniquet. I'm never going to need chest seals. I'm never going to need any of that. And I'm like, I hope to God you're right. And the rotten part of it is that I am quicker to agree with the person who doesn't believe they'll ever need the tourniquets. Because the odds are, if they have a well-stocked medicine cabinet, they have everything they need. But what if they don't? What if they need more?
Yeah. You know, fortunately, you know, you had that medical incident at work recently that kind of got you reevaluating everything with going back to work. Everybody here knows that I work in a blue collar trade. I'm a machinist, and a lot of the things that we work with could seriously maim or kill you. In the time that I have been at my current job, we have had one serious injury, and that was caused by a person standing up on a table, wrenching on things when they should not have been.
Nick.
There's no reason to be standing on a table applying torque to an object.
Why?
Because he got careless and overconfident, and exactly what you would imagine happened. He fell off the table and broke his arm pretty severely. And he has never fully recovered from that because he was an older guy when he did it. And realistically, that accident could have been prevented and should have been prevented. There were other people in the building. Other people saw him doing it, and nobody said anything. And that is a failure on all of us. But we were able to take care of him, get him treatment. Fantastic. There's been one other serious accident at this workplace, and that resulted in a guy losing a hand because of a falling object. Yeah. Big things, heavy things, sharp things. That's machining. And if you are not careful, it will catch you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I very recently got work in the last couple of years to upgrade our medical kit at work. And a big part of it was there was a few accidents at some other local shops that caused some pretty traumatic bleeding injuries. Not anything to do with us. I'm not going to get into it because I don't know the situation. I just do know that they ended up using a tourniquet on the guy and got them to invest in 4 tourniquets for the shop. If you work in any kind of industrial setting and your company does not have something like tourniquets or CPR equipment or like a backboard for evacuating people out of an area, might be time to start pushing back. Because, you know, you and I, we have our medical kits. I have a medical kit in my toolbox at work. But if I'm on the other end of the facility and someone is hurt way the hell over there, I might not find out about it until it's too late to help. But if everybody in the building knows that there is medical equipment in place A, place B, place C around the building, just like fire extinguishers, then maybe we can make it less bad.
But see that
when it does happen.
But see, that right there was the impetus for me, like putting together this little kit for my work bag, was because I have made comments in the past, and I'm hoping now that I have a bit more seniority, maybe I can get the ear of some senior leadership and like get them to see my point of view. But years ago, I was little Mr. Nobody. Nobody knew who I was, and they pretty well blew me off. But like, I've expressed concerns about the fact that we have a facility of 600 people and we have one nurse, and I don't believe, like, I haven't had the chance to like quiz her on what she has available to her, but I know that the majority of what she does is hand out Tylenol and Bandaids. Like, I just don't know.
I mean, to be expected
For a white collar office environment, but you know,
right.
This is the same facility or the same organization that does an annual active shooter training. And my point of view has always been, if we're gonna literally train the staff to be prepared for a person coming in here with an AK-47 and shooting the place up like a maniac, then why are we not going to have a discussion about having stop the bleed kits and tourniquets and training a portion of the staff? Not a lot of them. You could teach 5% of 600 people how to use tourniquets and put a couple of them around the facility, and that right there would be a big step in the right direction as far as saving people's lives. But those steps, and here's the thing of it, the last time we had that active shooter training, the instructor said the exact same thing to senior leadership. Said, y'all really should consider putting a portion of the staff through Stop the Bleed class, and he mentioned that class specifically. And he also,
it's a fantastic class.
And he also said, and y'all should equip that same portion of the staff with tourniquets, because if something bad happens in here, y'all are not going to get EMTs in here for 20 or 30 minutes until they clear the scene. And
best case 20 or 30 minutes. That's if the police find the shooter immediately and have the building cleared within minutes. We all saw how long it took Uvalde to clear the school.
Now, to be fair, we also have on-site security, so
sure,
you know, we've got a couple things moving in the right direction on that.
Odds are better, yes,
but this is the reason why I have my own kit in my work backpack, because I have a serious concern around the gap between what I think is an appropriate level of trauma care in the event of a really bad day and what I believe the facility is prepared to offer. And I hate to say it this way, because this would really upset some of my coworkers to hear this. That stuff's self-aid. I'm not saying I wouldn't use it to save somebody else, but I can promise you that if I'm hurt and you're hurt, I'm going home to see my wife and kid. That's the way it has to be.
Right. No, it absolutely does have to be that way because number one, even if you had enough to treat two people, it does them no good if you bleed out trying to help them.
Yeah.
So it's same rule as oxygen masks on an airplane. Get yours on first, then worry about the next person.
Yeah.
Because if you pass out halfway through, what good are you?
Yeah. I mean, I hate to be very like dispassionate about it, but at the end of the day, like your medical equipment, I would say with very few exceptions, has to be self-aid only. If I had to pick between me and my wife, I'd probably roll the dice on myself and take care of her first, but I prioritize her well-being above my own. But the number of people in this world that I prioritize their well-being above my own pretty much stops and ends with people that live in this household.
Well, they're your responsibility.
Yeah.
That's really what it comes down to. I'm sorry, but if you're another adult and not under my direct care, you're your responsibility first. And if I can help you, I'll try.
Oh, I got a thumbs up from Gillian. Looks like I might have got the wife's approval on that one.
That's good.
All right. Well, is there anything else to chuck in here before we roll this one out, man? I mean, like, we will be talking about medical something or the other every so often on the show from now till Kingdom Come, because it's freaking important, and frankly, it comes up all the time. Like, you know,
I'd love to get a vet on here for veterinary emergency medicine for your pets.
For a moment, I had a moment about like, what do you mean you wish you had a vet on the show? But then I realized we're talking about the different kind of vet.
You know, furry, but not beard furry. No, veterinarian, because look, a lot of us have pets. A lot of us have dogs, cats, whatever. And realistically, they are part of our family and they are under our care. You know, tourniquets that work on me don't work on animals as well because their limbs are different. Their bodies are different than ours.
I will say for a lot of years, rats tourniquets were recommended by several guys I knew who were dog handlers in the Army. But I haven't looked into them because I don't currently have a dog. Poor thing.
The elastic tourniquets?
Well, no, but I've heard that they make tourniquets specifically for dogs.
I'd be shocked if they didn't, given the number of canines in the military and police.
Well, and that's kind of the thing of it, is that, like, you know, for a lot of years, the Army kind of resorted to rats tourniquets because we all knew cat tourniquets don't work really well for dog limbs. And
yeah, they're too big.
Rats tourniquets, when those came out on the market, like, a lot of people had issues around using them on people, but they ended up working really well on dogs. So I talked to several dog handlers that were deployed to mostly Afghanistan, a couple in Iraq, who said they work really well on dogs, and that's all they carried for their animals. But now I understand that there are specific tourniquets meant just for dogs, and it's probably the military and law enforcement working dogs that have pushed development of all that.
More than likely, yeah. I mean, and look, that's a great military contract if you're the first guy that invents the dog tourniquet.
Yeah. No, but you're right. I mean, if anybody knows a veterinarian out there that would like to hang out with two weirdos and talk about stuff for an evening, I'd love an introduction. I don't know anyone who would fit that bill.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a really great relationship with a vet. I'll ask around. I might know a guy that knows a guy kind of deal, but maybe somebody in our audience knows a veterinarian or has a family member who's a veterinarian.
Or maybe one of you moonlights as a veterinarian.
There you go. That'd be great.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and punt this one out the door. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Monday is President's Day, and there's been so much freaking insanity coming out of Washington, D.C. We could probably freaking kill a whole episode talking about Doge and the Senate confirmations, and God only knows what else. Oh, Raggle Fraggle had a question. He's trying to sneak in here at the very end. I emailed Matt. I haven't heard back. I'm going to email him again just to see if I can get his attention. But if you can get his attention, ask him to check his junk folder, because I might have got it relegated to the spam.
Or if he's like me, there's 400 other emails in there that he's just bulk deleting.
Don't pull a Nick, please.
Hey man, if junk selling companies would stop emailing me, then I'd pay more attention to my email. But it's like getting the mail at this point. 95% of it is credit cards and scams.
That's so freaking sad, but probably pretty true. All right. Matter of Facts podcast heading out the door. Keep the red stuff in the body. Keep yourselves upright. And if your medicine cabinet doesn't look like ours, you should probably go attend to that before you have an owie. Talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Good night.